Alright, we're a day out from the launch of Path of Exile 2 Early Access, and I wanted to make a short and sweet video to make sure you guys are coming out of the gate swinging for your Sorceress Archmage Stormweaver builds. This video is entirely focused on having a powerful and efficient league start. Right out of the gates, I want you guys focused on the magic and rare loot that drop on the ground, specifically the weapon slot, because this is going to be how we scale most of our damage. Now for casters, you're going to want to look at wands, scepters, and staffs. And the mods you want to get on them are plus gem levels and percent increased spell damage or elemental damage or damage of the element type of the spell you're using. Now, these are important enough that if you start off in a lightning spell like Spark, but you happen to drop a staff that gives you +3 to fire skill gems and percentage increased fire damage, I would say you want to temporarily drop that lightning spell for a fireball because you're going to have so much more damage from the staff. The gem levels give us flat damage, which is the intrinsic damage of the skill gem. And then everything else is going to scale that flat damage further, including that percentage increase to fire damage. Flat damage, I believe you can only get it through plus gem levels, but percentage increased damage, you will find that on the tree. However, both of these are really good scalers early on. Now, if you don't end up getting good RNG with your drops, don't worry, because you'll be able to enter town and talk to NPC vendors that should be selling various gear, and I would browse through all the caster weapons to see if you can get an upgrade that way. There should also be a gambling mechanic with a vendor where you can just buy an unID'd weapon with gold, and that would be worth it 100% because your gold drops will scale as you level up. This isn't something you should be hoarding. I would just worry about getting, as powerful a weapon as you can, because it is going to make stuff much easier and it'll help ramp us up into pushing into endgame. Alright, this is a leaked passive skill tree. As you can see, it's pretty intimidating for new players, but I think I have a good idea of how we should path. And it's not going to be too different no matter what element of spell you do end up choosing. So right out of the gate, we're going to get some increased spell damage to scale our flat from our spell. Some more increased spell damage. Everything in here is good. There's cast speed, some mana regen, some energy shield. After we grab this, we'll probably want to go grab some penetration. Obviously fire, cold, lightning, that depends on the element you choose, but you're going to come here regardless. And I think this is going to be pretty high value damage as well, because this is damage from enemies inflicted by ailments from us, and every element inflicts an ailment, so this should be free damage. Eventually, we're going to want to go into Archmage, so we will be pathing up to all the lightning nodes up here. This gives us lightning damage from intelligence. We don't know what this is. It might be +1 level to lightning skill gems. It's something to do with lightning. And this is some more lightning pen. So once we get this, we'll eventually be able to swap into Archmage. Archmage does require a few acts of progression, because every act, I believe, you get 30 spirit, and you do need 100 spirit before you swap over to Archmage. Now, we haven't mentioned any mana nodes yet, because you probably don't want to be speccing into too much increased mana right off the gate. But once we go into territory where we can start thinking about Archmage, once you've got all these initial points I've mentioned, you're going to want to start looking for increasing your mana pool, both on gear and from the passive tree. So there will be a search bar in game as well, so you can just search mana and it will highlight all the big mana nodes. Now, I don't know how many of these are accurate, but if you zoom out, there's a lot of highlighted mana nodes. So that's what you're going to scale through the second portion of the campaign after you grab the first nodes we've mentioned. Now, if you haven't already watched my 30-minute crash course on how to build an Archmage Stormweaver, I do suggest you go watch that. It is the previous video on my channel. We cover the Ascendancy choices in much greater detail, and I also go over the build concept as a whole. For the scope of this video, I think we just have to talk about the first couple Ascendancy choices. If you're having any mana issues at all, I would start with Constant Gale. This gives us Arcane Surge, which gives us some damage as well as a bunch of mana regen. If you don't have any mana issues, you could opt for either Tempest Caller or Scouring Winds. Scouring Winds, you'll have to start using exposure support, either cold, fire, or lightning exposure support, depending on what your main damage dealer is. And this could up to almost double your damage on bosses, possibly, depending on how your skill tree is looking at this point. As for Tempest Caller, this does seem like a pretty powerful skill, and it triggers automatically on crits, which is nice, so you don't have to cast it yourself. However, I'm not sure if this is suited this early in a character's progression. Also, it is untested, so maybe I wouldn't recommend this for a beginner, at least not until I test it out in game. Now, for your second lab, I guess I would choose whichever of the Arcane Surge or the Exposure Ascendancy that you skipped on your first Ascendancy. Now, I suppose this wouldn't be a complete day one guide if I didn't at least mention the skill gem options we have, although realistically, this is a plug and play tree where you can use anything you want, so don't be shy to experiment here. I believe the level 1 spells are Spark, Fireball, and Frostbolt for the 3 different elements. All of these are projectile skills, so a good skill to pair with this would be Flame Wall. So the way Flame Wall works is any projectile you shoot through it gets ignited, and when it gets ignited, it gets added fire damage. So this is a way to scale the flat damage of a spell even further in conjunction with a plus level weapon. Other spells you could combine with these initial starter spells would be Orb of Storm for Spark. So you just stand near the Orb of Storm, and casting the Spark will trigger the Orb of Storm to chain out a lot more lightning. For Fireball, I've heard Solar Orb is a pretty good skill. The obvious thing to pair with Frostbolt would be Ice Nova, because if you read the text, they actually do work together. You can cast the Ice Nova on the fire or on the Frostbolt. So it's sort of a 2-button spell. And as you level up further, your character will also unlock more options for these skill gems you can use, and don't be shy to experiment. I'll be streaming this live tomorrow. I'll likely be going Spark just because it's been my skill of choice for the past 3 years, so I'm curious to see how it'll play in Path of Exile 2. And I'm also interested in Ball Lightning, which I don't think you unlock till a little bit later. That's also a lightning spell. So unless I get a crazy fire or cold weapon, that's what you can expect to see live on Twitch. I will be streaming the League Start. I stream every second I play, basically. And there are in-game chat channels. If you are following my build and you'd like to talk with other people who are doing the same thing, you could join Global 8686. It would be /Global8686, and then you'll swap your chat channel to the one that I'll be using. Also, feel free to join my Discord. Again, I think I mentioned this in the previous video, but there are thousands of players in there. A lot of them have played Archmage and PoE 1. So, there's a lot of overlap, and that's where you'll be able to, troubleshoot your build or just share any ideas you learn, even if I'm offline. The next YouTube video you can expect will probably be Saturday morning, because I'll probably be grinding a long session on Friday. So we'll have a day 1 update. I'll give you guys some info on any discoveries, and I will share the actual day 1 progression that I ended up doing. So, I guess we can compare that to this plan, and we'll see, what has changed. All right. I hope this helps you out. Good luck on the beaches tomorrow. Peace.